let's talk about Jacksonville, which is not something that most people would
Okay.
probably say. But from a betting standpoint, maybe there is a way to make some money off the Jags this year. So let's talk a little Jags. They're
Okay.
plus 700 to win their division, which
Ooh.
is actually ahead of the Texans in the AFC South.
Okay.
They're minus 650 to not make the playoffs. So if you
Nope.
do think that the Jags are a team on the comeback, for them to make the playoffs, it's plus
Okay.
450. Their
All
win
right.
total set at 6.5 over at BetMGM, juiced to the under at minus 125.
Yeah.
So KJ, looking at the menu for the Jacksonville Jags, is there any of these bets that you would like to take?
No. No. They're not winning their division. They won't sniff the playoffs. Remember, they are in the AFC, which is now quarterback you, right? So it's going to be better than last season. So if there's a bet out there, maybe at the win total, maybe I would touch. If it's 6, I hate to be, like, let's go through the schedule, but you're like, if you got the Commanders, you've got the Giants, the Lions, the Jets, the Texans twice, you might be able to get to that 6 number, right? So, that's probably the only play that I would have on Jacksonville outside of maybe some individual numbers, right? Like, does Trevor Lawrence throw for over 3,000 yards? Some of these really specific parlays or props that are in there, you'd really have to dig in there. I mean, you'd have to be a Jaguar savant, to really say, like, I think Chanot is going to go for over 200 yards over the next 3 weeks. Yeah, maybe you take that. Maybe you know something. So there's going to be value. That's the thing with Jack. Because they're so bad, there is going to be value if you find a play in them. There's not going to be any skin of the teeth bet, where they're like, hey, you could go one way or the other. We know it's always going to go one way. It's usually the bad way. So, yeah, maybe win totals out of those choices there. I could see playing 6.
I think the only one that I was seriously considering is taking an under on their win total, just because I think it is a high bar to climb. I think it's a little bit high of a number for
Yeah.
a team that still has a ton of question marks. And so let's look at the offseason for the Jags, because they did make some notable moves in
Right.
free agency. They picked up Christian Kirk
Okay.
from
Yeah.
Arizona, which
Arizona.
for a 4-year deal worth 84 million, I'm not going to lie, that seemed a little high for Christian Kirk. They
Hey,
also picked up a guard in Brandon Scherf, who is a pretty good pickup, and also Trayvon Walker, number one overall pick in the NFL draft, a high potential guy. But I think the question mark for me is how quickly can the Jags turn things around? Because I do think this is a team that's going to be much better just for the fact that Urban Meyer isn't there. He
yeah.
didn't even know what players were on the field. He didn't even know his personnel. And plus, we haven't even talked about the culture. The culture has to be 1,000% better when he's not going around to the kicker or the punter, whoever, saying, hey, you're not doing your job, and just gives him a kick in the side. So Trevor Lawrence has room for improvement. And I think if you're banking on the Jags to be better, you say, number one, Doug Peterson knows how to talk to quarterbacks. And
Yep.
maybe there's a good quarterback in there somewhere with Trevor Lawrence, because last season, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and only completed 59% of his passes. So, KJ, what's the scenario in which the Jags are actually a good team?
Well, one, Urban Meyer's gone. I've never seen a guy get hired just because he's a cool guy to have a drink with. I mean, that's what Urban Meyer was really hired for. And I think
Well, he
Trevor
was a
Lawrence,
good college coach.
yeah, except for this isn't college. Like Urban Myers might have thought the games were played on Saturdays. It's like, that's only around Christmas, Urban. And that's if you're good. Trevor Lawrence, his numbers, while they may sound bad, they sound very much like Peyton Manning's first year. And so while I'm not going to say he's the next Peyton Manning, I will say that he might be the one that you see the most improved growth with this year. They picked up Evan Ingram, who from the Giants, who was a former first rounder. That's a kind of a reclamation project. And if Evan Ingram can turn himself around, then Trevor Lawrence has a very dependable tight end, and very dependable tight ends are helpful for first year, second year quarterbacks. Look, Mac Jones and Hunter Henry in New England, right? So you've got Christian Kirk, who, yeah, let's look away from the money, and maybe you'll get better performance than what you've already had. Chanot has offered something, and then we forget that Travis Etienne missed all last season, and the two of them play together at Clemson. So there's that synergy that exists there. So he may have another weapon, even just throwing the ball out of the backfield. So, you know, again, the 6 is going to be a stretch. If I can count the games out, let's see if I can count 6. I could see them beating the Commanders, the Texans, the Giants, the Lions, the Jets, the Texans. Wow, it's going to be a push like right at 6. So,
AJ, looking at those teams, I think
yeah,
most of those
yeah.
teams are going to be better, with the exception of maybe the Jets. Like
I would
the
say the
win
Jet.
total for the Giants is much higher this year. The
Yeah,
Commanders now have Carson Wentz, so I don't
yeah.
think any of those games are a shoe in for a win.
Here's the under. Here's where your under will hit. I think the Jets would win one of those games. They play them twice. No, just once. The Giants and the Jets. I'm sorry. So that Jets game could be a tough. That could be a tough out. More so than the Giants. I think the Giants are just a walking disaster. But it's going to be a push. I think that Jets game, literally the last week of the season, may determine whether 6 hits or the under hits. That's going to be fascinating. So yeah, the Jaguars will be exciting if you want something to follow bad all the way through the year.
Well, here's another way to play it. If you think the Jags have a tough time starting the season, which sometimes is the case for first year head coaches, just because you have to learn a new system, you have to learn all the new players, which Urban Meyer never did.
Right.
But Jacksonville to open the season 0-4, you can get that for plus 175 over at BetMGM. They start the season at
Wow.
Washington against a good Colts team, at the Chargers, and at the Eagles. I think that's worth a play.
Yeah, but the juice is on that Commanders game, right? Like, does Carson Wentz decide to throw to Jacksonville again, which got him fired out of Indy?
Great
This is what
point.
makes it right. This is what makes the NFL so great. It's better than an episode of The Young and the Restless sometimes. So for Carson Wentz may come out sneezing in that game, and there's that plus 175 you're talking about. Like, it's chew. You
Oh my
just never
gosh.
know.
That's an excellent point, because you're absolutely right. Because it was the Jags who were the nail in the coffin for Carson Wentz in Indianapolis.